What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Second Stringers podcast. My name is Will Baldwin, and with me, as always, is Paul Guado. Paul, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
You know, I'm making it work in the coronavirus world. What about you?
Yeah, no, I'm the same. Just hanging out. Been doing a lot of nothing and, living it up.
A lot of nothing is like the best way to describe coronavirus 2020, like what you're supposed to do. Just like finding ways to be busy when you really don't have a reason to be.
Yeah, there's been a couple distractions though, and I think what we're going to be talking about is one of those distractions that really, they had crazy numbers, and the draft I'm talking about, the crazy numbers, and it was really exciting to kind of get freed from the coronavirus for a couple hours at least and not have to think about that.
Yeah, it was nice to have a 3-day distraction and talk about and watch a real live sporting event as opposed to watching old games or pretending like trying to solve unanswerable questions like it seems we're doing all the time now. So it's nice to just have like 3 days of just positivity, which there definitely hasn't been that much positivity recently. So it was nice to see like all the happy guys getting drafted and all their celebrations, and it was cool seeing all the kids in the draft rooms. Just like added the culmination of how everyone is stuck with their families right now and making it work. So it was cool to see that even our favorite NFL teams are being that's the one thing about the coronavirus is everyone, no matter who you are, where you're from, how much you make, everyone's in the same kind of boat, even an NFL GM who is stuck at home. Even Bill Belichick, who's making drafts with his dog.
That was hilarious.
It's funny. It's kind of cool to see like that everyone that you follow year round is a person, which we don't always get to. We don't always get that confirmation.
Yeah, kind of the inside look at everything. It was really it was different, but it was a good different, I think.
Yeah, it was cool. It was I don't know if I'd want it exactly like that again, because the Goodell thing was weird, and
yeah, that was kind of creepy at times.
I liked After Hours Goodell, where he's as tired.
Eating a bowl of M&Ms.
Yeah, like he's tired, like all of us are. He's like, yeah, I don't even care about this pick anymore. Like, let's get this out. Let's get out of here.
Just lean back in his chair.
This is like, really, Goodell? You're not even gonna stand for the picks anymore? Like,
just a savage.
So, what Paul and I have decided to do to recap the draft is because neither of us see a point in pretending like we know how a 6th round pick is going to pan out. We've decided to take specific winners and losers from the weekend and kind of talk about them instead of just kind of looking at instead of like trying to pretend and give grades. Because we were talking about earlier about how ridiculous grades were, and I said that the famous Saints draft where brought in Kamara, Lattimore, and Ramczyk is well known from Saints fans to have gotten a C+ from Bleacher Report. So because of that, and those were guys who watch the tape and know what they're doing, neither of us want to pretend like we've watched a 6th round pick out of Wyoming play 4 full games. So how they're going to fit in. So we just thought we'd go through 5 each, individual winners and losers. Neither of us know who's on the other's list. So, Paul, why don't you get us started with your first winner?
Yeah, so my first winner, I'm going to go with, obviously, I think it's kind of easy, my favorite team, Miami, especially their first round. That's my winner because, they filled a lot of needs. I was skeptical about taking a quarterback this year. I was hoping that we waited till next year, but we didn't have to trade up, and we got Tua at number 5, and I couldn't be happier with that. I think he's going to be a great NFL quarterback, and we passed on Drew Brees, so we can't pass on Tua now. So I'm really excited about that pick. Then the Austin Jackson pick, the offensive tackle at number 18. I think that's a really smart pick. Protect Tua. Ryan Fitzpatrick probably for the first part of the year, and then I'd expect Tua to take over at some point during the year, maybe later in the year once he's fully healthy. And then Noah Igbone, I can't pronounce his last name, cornerback that we got at number 30, I think, that we traded down for with in one of the more infamous trades out of this draft with Green Bay. Taking a cornerback, really solidifying our defense. Our defense was good last year. Of course, we had that run in the second half of the year that we were better than the Pats. So the defense looked really good last year. I'm happy with the cornerback in the first round. And a QB and a tackle, I mean, that's kind of what we needed. We have a great receiver in Devontae Parker who's going to hopefully have another breakout year this year. So I'm excited for it.
What I really liked about what you guys did is, especially with the first two picks, you guys went all in on ceiling over floor, which for a rebuilding team, sometimes you'll try and like play it safe, but with the Dolphins and how many picks you guys have over the next 2 years, I like early trying to get a superstar instead of just trying to get a solid starter.
Mm-hmm.
So it would have been easy to go get Herbert and just say we're going to be solid, but you go get Tua because Tua has the highest ceiling of any quarterback in this draft. And then you go to Austin Jackson, the tackle, who actively has said he wasn't at his ideal weight this year because of his bone marrow donation to his sister.
Mm-hmm.
So you get two high quality people because they're both high character guys. You bring them both in, and you're betting on them in the long run working out and hitting their ceiling, which is on one level a little ballsy, but on the other hand, why not? You guys had like 26 picks this year and you have like 38 next year. So like some of them the reality is some picks are going to hit and some are going to miss no matter if you play it safe or not. So why not go for the stars and see what happens? Because I think you can attest the Dolphins for the last 20 years have played it safe a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be why you go 7-9 every year. Like,
yeah, and I don't think Brian Flores is going to let that happen. And I think that's my favorite part about him as a coach. And I'm so excited for our future with him because I think he's going to make our team a competitive team. And hopefully if we can have next year's draft like we had this year's draft, hopefully it turns out well. But next year's draft turns out this well, we could be a playoff team really soon. And once you're in the playoffs, you never know what'll happen.
Yeah, I think at the very least you guys have building blocks, which is all you can really ask for from a draft after you're talent deficient like you guys were this year.
Yep.
Let's move on to here. Do you want to do your second winner or your first loser?
I don't really know. Let's do winners first and then we'll do losers second.
Okay.
All right, so my second winner, I've got the Denver Broncos.
Ooh, I got Drew Lock on my list too, so we can tackle that.
Yeah, that was kind of my main thing because Drew Lock got talent around him now. I mean, Melvin Gordon's there now. That's the biggest thing is having a great running back there.
Yeah.
They got Jerry Jeudy at 15, who's going to be an animal. They got KJ Hamler at 46, who is going to be a good starting NFL receiver. That's for sure. And I that Jerry Jeudy pick, it's one of my favorite picks in the draft, if I were to be honest with you, because I think Drew Lock, he has a huge arm, and I think he'll show it next year with a deep threat, but also a great route runner in Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah, my only concern with Denver is they didn't get a tackle, and their tackles were terrible this year. But otherwise, when you look at the skill possessions for the Broncos, it's kind of like I heard someone say that I can't remember who it was. I can't remember which podcast it was, but they were saying that John Elway is basically determined to not bust this time with his quarterback. Mm-hmm. And because of that, he is going all in on offense and just saying, we're going to take a backseat on defense a little bit other than the Bouye trade. And we're going to basically bet on just putting as much talent around Drew Lock as possible and saying, I'm not busting this time. I'm not letting I'm not letting it happen again, because so many times he's tried and failed to get that next guy. And I think he's tired of hearing that he can't get a quarterback. So he's just like, you know what, I like Drew, and I'm going to give him every opportunity I can to make him successful.
Yeah, I like that call by him. I think Drew Lock's a talented quarterback, and I think he has a lot of potential. So I'm excited to see what the Broncos can do next year.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Drew Lock, you have to be ecstatic, right? Like, I don't even, how they got Jerry Jeudy at 15. I'm not necessarily sold on him being a number one receiver, but putting him together with what they had last year, I mean, you got Noah Fant, you got, oh man, guy out of SMU. Oh, I can picture him. Who's their number one receiver this year?
It's a good question.
Oh my goodness. Okay, you go. I'm looking it up.
Okay, but I mean, I think the biggest thing for Drew Lock is having two good running backs now.
Courtland Sutton.
Yeah, Courtland Sutton. He's really
man.
good.
That's embarrassing for getting him, but yeah, him and Jeudy together. That's a 1-2 that's a difficult and really young 1-2, because Sutton's going into his third year. So you got two guys who are probably under 24, 25 years old at the wide receiver positions. You got Noah Fant, who's an elite receiving tight end, or at least projects to have that potential. And then, as you're saying, you got two high-quality running backs. Like, I don't know how much more you could ask for in your second year as a quarterback in the skill position department than what Drew Lock's going to have this year in Denver.
Yeah, I'd be pretty excited for this year if I were him.
Yeah, I think you're getting a little picky if you ask for more. Let's be honest here. Who's your third winner?
Yeah, my third winner, I got the Kansas City Chiefs just for drafting a running back, because that was their one hole in their offense. They took a running back in the first round, the only team to take, when they took Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and I think it's going to be a really smart pick for them, because they already have such a talented offense. It's just their one hole was the running back. And of course, in the Super Bowl, we had guys step up, but we've got a solid first round running back now on our team on a cheaper contract. So I think I'm excited for Kansas City with that draft pick.
A Chiefs scout was quoted as saying that Andy Reid during the process said that Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the guy they took, was better than Brian Westbrook. So
that makes me even more excited.
So if they can throw a guy who, even if he gets near the level of player that Brian Westbrook was at his peak with the Eagles, then that offense is just
stop that offense.
Oh my, yeah. So
like how?
That's my only comment on you saying the Chiefs were winners. That's all I heard from them. So
yeah, what do you want to go on some of your winners now?
Yeah, sure. Because you tackled 3.
Yep.
My first winner, Paul's favorite player in the NFL, Senor Tom Brady. The reason I went with Brady is twofold. First of all, the fact that Bucs brought in a tackle to help solidify that offensive line, that was really the main question mark of that offense last year. Outside of Jameis turning the ball over, was the Bucs offensive line, specifically the tackle position, and they went out and got their guy, a freak show athlete in Tristan Wirfs. So anytime a team can solidify their biggest hole on a side of the ball, that's a high quality pick. Yeah, and they coupled that later on by bringing in a running back to help come in and challenge Ronald Jones, which was, if there was another question mark on that offense, it was Ronald Jones. So you look at those 2 picks alone, and I don't know how Brady isn't ecstatic from what the Bucs did.
Yeah.
And then if you go look over at what the Patriots did and continue to do, the Patriots continue to not bring in offensive weapons, which, knowing Belichick, his draft probably didn't change at all whether Brady was there or not. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
let's be realistic here. So I think it's pretty safe to say that through the draft and free agency, Brady made the right decision. Now we'll see once the season started, but it's hard to see any faults in the decision making he made.
Yeah, I also had the Bucks as one of my winners, and the reason they were one of my winners is because they got Gronk for a 4th round pick. I don't think anybody in the 4th round will be like Gronk will be next year, probably because of he took a year off. He got healthy. He's going to bulk back up, and I think he'll be a pretty good weapon. Of course, I'm not going to be cheering for the Bucks. I will hate them, but this is the one time I'll give them a bit of props.
You hate them? Why? Just because Brady's there?
You got that right.
Why? He's a great guy who breaks into people's homes.
Yeah, what a criminal, hey? And then tries to go in parks when they're closed. Like, come on.
Yeah. What a disrespectful human did not take.
I'm just not a Brady fan. I can't cheer for him, so I can't cheer for the Bucks next year.
Well, I can't cheer for the Bucks because they're in my freaking division. But
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, that offense.
Ecstatic about that.
That team is silly now. Let's be honest.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting experiment. That's for sure. I'm sure they'd be better with Jameis, though. That's the one thing.
Hey, we're bringing in Jameis. So.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge.
Okay, so my second winner is a guy who's been trying to get a contract for 86 years, Dak Prescott. I don't know if you're a Cowboys fan how you didn't come away from this weekend ecstatic from all your picks, but specifically the first round. I mean,
CD.
Like, they didn't need CD necessarily, but the reality is like, you bring in a guy like CD Lamb to go with Amari and what you already have.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how, if you're a Cowboys fan, you're not on the moon right now. I mean, how do you even pretend to have a hope of covering and stopping an offense that has CD Lamb, Amari Cooper, and Zeke?
Yeah, you don't. It's going to be near impossible to stop them. And I think it's a prove it year this year for Dak Prescott. Now you're either going to be a franchise quarterback or you, with all this talent, you can't go wrong. Like, he has to hit it correctly now.
Yeah, I saw a thing that was basically like the Cowboys should just make him play on the tag this year and say, if you can't get us to the promised land with this talent, then we need to we need to go in a different direction. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to disagree with that logic. I mean, that high quality receiving room to go with Zeke, I mean, I don't know what more, especially with an offensive head coach coming in and Mike McCarthy. Like, I don't know what more you could ask for if you're a Cowboy fan.
Yeah, it'll be an exciting year for the Cowboys. That's for sure.
Well, that's the plan. We'll see. Yeah, I don't know if it always works out like that for them.
I guess I thought the same thing last year.
My third winner, I really loved what the Colts did.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically 3 of their picks. I love Michael Pittman. I think there's a decent possibility he's their best receiver by the end of the year. He gives me major Michael Thomas memories and flashbacks. I don't know if he's going to have the work ethic in the league, but the way he played at USC and the kind of player he is, he's just really similar. Then you go get Jonathan Taylor to go along with Marlon Mack. That's A+ backfield. So those 2 weapons alone basically addressed the biggest needs on that offense when you watched them last year.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, I love the Jacob Eason pick. Eason needs some time to sit behind a quarterback and develop. And the biggest thing with Eason has nothing to do with his arm talent. It's learning how to read the field and process better, because he's not the freak show athlete that a lot of guys who are getting drafted higher are today. He's more of the classic sit back and read the defense kind of guy. And I don't know if you could pick a better guy to learn from on a 1-year deal than Phillip Rivers.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Like I really can't. I don't even like even a Drew Brees. Like they don't have the same build, for example. Whereas Eason and Rivers, their measurables are similar. Eason's got the nicer release, obviously, but I don't know
Yeah.
if you could have found a better mentor for him coming into his NFL career and in a better place where he can just sit behind him and not be forced to play early. I'm like, if Jacob Eason is going to work in the NFL, it is in this situation that Indianapolis has afforded him. And because of that, I think Colts fans are big winners because they may have gotten a franchise quarterback in the 4th round.
Yeah, and that would be huge. I mean, we've seen it before. I mean, guys get drafted, sit behind a guy for a couple of years, and then become really good unless you're Russell Wilson. You get drafted late, and then you come in early, and you're just really good.
Or Gardner. Don't forget.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Minshew. Can't forget about him. No, but I really like that choice by you. I agree with pretty much everything you said. Indianapolis had a really solid draft.
Why don't you take us through your 4th winner? I think it's probably, is it your final one? Because I think I took one of yours.
Yeah, this is my final one. I've got Justin Herbert as a winner because, first off, the new Chargers uniforms are unbelievable. But the main reason is because their roster was stacked last year. They just didn't have a good quarterback. I think now that he can come in and maybe learn from Tyrod Taylor for a little bit, but then get some starts under his belt with that type of a roster, I'd be pretty excited. So I have Justin Herbert as one of my winners.
Yeah, I don't know how if you're Herbert, and we just were talking about Eason, and if Eason is going to work, if Herbert's going to work, he needs high-quality weapons and a system that allows him to be him, and the Chargers have both of those. So I was thinking Buffalo because of Tyrod. Just when you look at how he plays and the biggest question marks for him were reading the defense, and when you put high quality receivers around a player who struggles to read a defense, especially earlier in their career, it makes it a lot easier because they're just going to naturally find a way to get open.
Yep.
So because of that, that's a huge win for him. And also getting to play behind a guy like Tyrod, who Tyrod isn't exactly an athletic freak when it comes to throwing the ball. Now he can run it, but Tyrod is specifically still in the NFL because he's learned the game and learned how to read defenses. And Tyrod also is the kind of guy who he knows he's not the long-term answer. And just because he's going to try and be the starter for the entire year this year and maybe next year doesn't mean he's also not going to be the kind of guy who helps out Herbert. And I think that's a really healthy environment for our young quarterback who needs to learn, kind of like what I was saying about Eason, who needs to sit back there and learn from a veteran. I think Herbert's going to have a similar situation in Los Angeles.
Yep, I'm with you on that.
Okay, so I'll take my final winner is Matt Rule for establishing a culture. When you go in as a first-year head coach, the most important thing you can do above all else is establish a culture that your team knows and your players can buy into. And so when you go all in on a culture of speed and physicality, then that kind of lets everyone find their role and know what's going on in the rest of the building, and there aren't any question marks. And I think the Carolina Panthers did that in a big way this week. And just because they're not going to be the most talented team in the division this year per se, doesn't mean that when you look at the additions of like a Derek Brown, for example, this team is not going to be fun to play against. Like they're going to be the 7-9 team who could easily go 11-5 and is in every single game. And as a first-year head coach, you kind of love to see that. Like you love to see the building of a culture moving forward. Like we saw that with you guys in Miami this year. There's no question marks for anyone who walks into the Dolphins building what that culture is and what they're trying to do there. And I think Carolina has done something similar with Matt Rule in just their first draft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I really like that choice by you. Actually, I didn't even think of that.
I mean, it's funny too that they went all defense. I don't think that was intentional. I love the idea that you can tell they definitely just went best player available
Yeah,
because that's how something like that happens. Where it's just like, yeah, I guess like that's just how it broke out. It's like the best player was always on defense, like, and we just didn't need to reach.
yeah. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I thought it was weird that they didn't take anybody on offense, and then I thought about it, and they're not going to be great next year. And there's some decent quarterbacks coming out next year. They've
I
already
think
got Christian McCaffrey, so
I think what it says too is that he thinks that their offense has underachieved over the years he wasn't there, and that
mm-hmm.
there's some talent there, and that could they use some additional help, especially on the offensive line? Like, yeah, but I think he's also saying that if Teddy does his thing and doesn't turn the ball over and they run the ball and control the clock, there's a lot of talent in that receiver room. And with
Yep.
McCaffrey, obviously, that he thinks that they can score enough points to be at very least a high level bad team, which anytime your first year there, you're a high level bad team. That's a good start. You don't want to be truly awful, like, for example,
Mm-hmm.
the Bengals were this year.
Yeah,
You want to have some building blocks moving forward at the very least, and I think the Panthers are, at the bare minimum, going to have some building blocks.
yeah. No, I agree with you. It's they they established their culture, like you said, and yeah, there's those building blocks that it'll be easy for them to develop their team more in the future now.
Okay, let's head over to the losers. Who's your first loser?
Yeah, so my first loser is Green Bay's draft.
Yeah,
I mean, what? I I was just confused. I expected them to take a wide receiver. They didn't even draft one at all. Yeah, I was just confused.
what how I felt about the Packers draft is the Packers management told you two things that were pretty interesting. The first thing they said was they don't think they're as close as making the NFC title game would normally tell you to think you were.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you think you're really close, yeah, you might like the prospect of taking a Jordan Love, but if there's a high level receiver prospect on the board, or that one piece that you think you're away from, maybe it's a linebacker because their linebacking core was weak, especially with Blake Martinez leaving.
Yeah,
I think the fact that you didn't see them address either of those positions and instead went quarterback in the first round tells you that they don't think they're as close as getting to a conference title game would leave you feeling as a Packer fan, which if you're a Packers fan, that sucks.
yeah. I'd be kind of pissed off if I was a Packers fan. I think just because of how the draft went down, but it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future with them.
What the other thing that I think the Packers told you, which is pretty interesting, is they're going all in on the Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan system
Mm-hmm.
that that Matt LaFleur came from. When you see them go get a power back like AJ Dillon, and you see them go tackle an interior offensive lineman late in the draft as opposed to grabbing a random receiver, it tells you that they're probably looking at trying to run the ball a lot more and trying to control
Yeah.
the clock a lot more, which is really interesting for a team that I think a lot of us would say has Aaron Rodgers and should be looking to score more points than that. But
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate running the ball. I mean, they have Aaron Jones, who's already a great running back, but I don't. Yeah, I don't see them needing to
the reason
run
the
the ball
reason
more.
the reason I hate the AJ Dillon pick actually more than the Jordan Love pick is because their two best players on offense were a quarterback and a running back. So let's say you're planning on replacing Aaron Rodgers, like, okay, you can do that. But like a second round pick's a high quality pick. Like this is where you can go get that receiver. But instead they took a power back, which you can find in literally any round.
Yep.
Like you can like AJ Dillon is a really good player and he's a high level power back, but like his comp is Derrick Henry, like at the highest end. Like nobody watched that team in the NFC title game and was like, you know what this team is missing is Derrick Henry. Like,
Yeah,
that
exactly.
that doesn't make any sense.
When you
So
watch that game, they were missing a whole lot, and
they were
it
missing
wasn't a running back or a quarterback.
they were missing speed. Like they were dude deficient when you watch them against the high level teams last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think they're any closer to beating the Niners. And that should have been their goal coming into the weekend. And I think it's really interesting that they kind of took a step back in their draft as opposed to trying to go forward. They tried to like stay even. It's almost like they were like trying to be a wild card team last year, and then this is like their draft to get them to be like a second round team, and then their goal is next year to try and win the Super Bowl.
So weird. When they made the conference finals last year, you'd expect them to make a bit of a splash. Like,
yeah,
especially when they traded up.
It really
was the part.
That was the weirdest part about why did they trade up? Was anyone going to take him in front of them?
I don't think so.
Yeah, that was one of the weirdest parts.
Yeah, I was
giving up an asset to get a guy. I don't think anyone was like, who was moving up to get him?
exactly like if you look at it,
it's just weird.
You had Seattle, Baltimore, and Tennessee in between them. None of those teams are getting a quarterback.
Yeah, it's just like the thing I always say about the draft is you don't want to make picks that make other teams excited.
Yeah.
So like for example, the Niners took Kinlaw.
Yeah.
And you're like, crap, they just replaced Buckner. And then they went and got a receiver with their other first round pick. You're like, okay, the Niners are going to be better.
Mm-hmm.
Like no one in the NFC West was like excited about those picks. Whereas like if you're a Vikings fan or a Bears fan or a Lions fan, like I don't know how you don't come away from this weekend excited about what the Packers did, and that's not exactly. That's not where you want to be.
Yeah, that's a tough place to be in.
Who's your second loser?
Yeah, so my second loser is New England. Just because, first off, I don't like them. And second off, I don't know. I don't know if Stidham is going to be as good as, like, good enough to even make the playoffs in that division next year. And I don't
think they're trying to make the playoffs this year.
Draft.
I don't think they're trying to make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, that's fair. But I was just confused with their draft. Yeah, I don't know. It just felt like they were trading out whenever I was watching, and it was just like, interesting.
I think their goal is to go 6-10 or 7-9. Like they're going to try and win every game.
Yep.
But literally every single talented player that they had last year that could have left, they let leave.
Yep.
Like they made no effort to keep any of them, and it just tells you that this is like a gap year for them where they're trying to get their cap situation right. Because they have like $30 million in dead cap this year, just because of all the guys who have left. And I think it just tells you that especially when you look at their draft, like I saw people criticizing them for not going receiver. And what Bill is telling you is like, he's like, we're not going to be trying to win a Super Bowl this year, so I'd rather get foundational rotation players than a receiver who might not be that good.
Yeah.
He's probably thinking like, I'd rather just go get a receiver in free agency next year when we have actual cap space and trade for one to solidify our room than to draft a guy in the 4th round who's probably not going to be that good.
Mm-hmm.
Like Belichick doesn't have success drafting generally position players.
Yeah. So
when you look at his draft, he's just like, we're going to get a bunch of tight ends. We're going to run the ball a bunch. And we're going to run the ball a bunch. We're going to play great defense, and we're going to try and win 10 games. We're probably not going to because we're a talent deficient at certain positions. And then next year we're going to go either a forward with Stidham and kind of like the don't make a mistake quarterback, kind of like what they had with Brady in the first 3. Because people forget that Brady, especially in the first 2 titles, was a middling to below average quarterback.
Yeah.
Who relied on the defense and made like he earned his rings through his clutch production when it mattered most.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody, when those teams won the Super Bowl, their first thought was Brady is the best player on this team. He just wasn't. And I think that Belichick's trying to rebuild that. And if Stidham sucks, the reality is they're going to have a crazy amount of picks next year.
Yep.
Because of all the comp picks they've got from all the guys we said let leave, and then the couple of trades they made. And so don't be surprised if the Patriots go 6-10, Stidham sucks, and they trade up and get a top 2 or 3 guy in next year's draft. I guarantee you, Belichick would never say that's his plan, but his plan is clearly to. They're definitely going to try this year. Like, don't get me wrong on that. Like, that's not Belichick's way. Belichick would never intentionally lose games.
Yeah.
But with the picks they made, you can clearly tell that he's more trying to revert back to his earlier days than the 2007 Patriots. I'll just say that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree on that.
Who's your third loser?
My third loser is the scouts for the Dallas Cowboys.
That's a good one.
Because they were not allowed to call Jerry Jones during the draft. He was
Jerry
obviously on his yacht.
Jerry Loki killed it.
Yeah, and he did a great job. I mean, they had a pretty exciting draft, getting CeeDee Lamb in the first round. Like, we've already talked about this, but
I think if this draft taught us anything, it's that there's probably too many people in the room at the regular drafts.
And
like,
I mean, Jerry Jones proved it. He did it himself.
Not even just him.
Old enough to be going crazy and doing a good job.
Like, not even just him. All the other teams didn't have every scout they usually have in the room in their Zoom calls. Like, that has come out pretty unanimously. Like, there was just fewer people involved in this draft, and I think a bunch of teams are going to learn that we don't need 28 people in our draft room. Like, we really only need like 5 or 6.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I didn't intentionally mean that by this pick, but yeah, no, I'm with you.
Here, I'll go with my first loser. Yeah. My first loser is cancel everything guy. When the NFL said they were going forward with the draft, a bunch of people were mad about it.
Yeah.
And I think they took maybe the biggest L of anyone on the weekend because, as we said, everyone got a much-needed, positive, encouraging, and exciting weekend at a time where we haven't really had that. So that's probably the first way they took the L. And then just seeing every single one of those kids have their dream come true, and a bunch of people wanted to push that back, even though it was proven time and again on the weekend with the technological breakthroughs that we saw that we didn't need to at all. And I think it was really cool seeing all those guys. Like, the Saints first round pick just starts bawling because his dream came true. Like, that was a much needed thing for a lot of us to see after what has gone on for the better part of the last 8 weeks. So to everyone who said cancel everything, you took a massive L this weekend because there was proven that there was really no reason we couldn't run the NFL draft.
Exactly, and I think they killed it, and I mean, it was a much-needed break, so tough look for those people.
Tough look for those people is right. Like, I don't know how you're not thinking that was a mistake to say cancel everything. So my next loser, I went with Eagle fans, and my reason was kind of similar to what we said about the Packers, how the Packers kind of told you what they think of their roster. The Eagles did as well. I mean, yeah, they went receiver in the first round, but there were some high-quality corners on the board in round 2. And anyone who watched the Eagles last year knew their secondary was an abject disaster. And yeah, they brought in Darius Slay, but I don't think they really needed a backup quarterback in the second round. I understand I understand what they're trying to do with Jalen Hurts, but I don't really think they got the value for that pick that they necessarily thought they did.
Yeah, and
if that was the third round, I would have really liked that pick, but round 2 is like you're trying to get starters in the first 2 rounds, and Jalen Hurts is going to play 0 snaps at quarterback this year in the best case scenario. So I don't know how a top 2 round pick when your franchise quarterback is 26 years old makes any sense.
Yeah, the only thing that I thought about it is Carson Wentz has had so many injuries.
Well, that's what
they don't want him running the ball.
That's
and I think they're going to use him like a Taysom Hill.
Well, what they're banking on is that the reality is Carson Wentz is never going to play 16 games.
Yeah.
So they want to have an elite backup. But for me, I'm not trying to take an elite backup in round 2.
Yeah, that's fair. I agree with that.
Like, if you want to take an elite backup, take Eason in round 3. You know what I mean? Or take
Philly's the cities of backups. Like, they know how to get a backup quarterback good. So
yeah, like
I agree with you.
Like, so we're just gonna have Jalen Hurts be a gimmick. Like, I think people are forgetting when they're saying this pick makes sense. Is like Carson Wentz is under 30.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he should have 10 more years left in his career, and they took a guy who probably needs 2 or 3 years of development, and then is probably going to want to look to play. Like, that makes no sense to me. Yeah. Especially like odd. I can't say this enough. If it was round 3 is where you start to go for good players who the hope is you can develop them into starters, but the reality is in their first 2 years they're probably not going to start for you. Like, that's the round 3-4 goal, and then 5 and 6, 7 is shoot in the dark, hope something hits.
Yeah.
But round 3-4 is solid player who can be a good backup for you and then transition into a starter. Like, when is Jalen Hurts going to start for the Eagles?
Yeah, the only possibility is if Carson Wentz gets hurt. So
yeah, so like that for me, that makes no sense for putting a round 2 quality pick on him. Like, I understand what they're trying to do, and like you said, like Carson's probably going to get hurt this year, but I don't think a second round. Like, what does that tell you about what they think about Carson Wentz's health?
Yeah, exactly.
Earning a second round pick. That's what I'm saying.
I don't think it's sending the right message.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying when I say like they're sending a message, kind of like the Packers did, about what they think about their roster. Like, they're telling you everything that you need to know about Carson Wentz. They can tell you that they think he's an answer long-term sustainably, but the reality is that you use a second-round pick on Jalen Hurts because you think that there's at least a 10% chance that Carson Wentz is out of the league in 3 years or not on the Eagles in 3 years.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting pick, and I mean, I'm not totally against it, but
it's just weird.
Yeah, it is weird.
And if I'm an Eagles fan, like, the reason I have Eagles fans as losers on this is because, like, if you're an Eagle fan, you probably love Wentz and you wanted to try and get back to that Super Bowl level, and I don't think a second-round pick of Jalen Hurts necessarily gets you there.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Have you done 3 losers, or should I do one more?
You can do another, actually. Yeah, I've done 3.
Okay, so my third loser is Baker Mayfield excuses, because they're officially over.
Yep.
They went double tackle with free agency in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
He has arguably the most talented skill positions of anyone in the NFL, including the Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
Because they brought in a high-level tight end. And, like, when you look at everything that the Browns have done with the high-quality talent that is all over their roster, they brought in a high-level offensive coach. There's just no reason that the Browns shouldn't be good this year, other than if Baker Mayfield struggles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so
I'm with you on that.
So the excuses, by that logic, are over.
He's got to pull through this year and really prove himself as that first-round quarterback, the first overall quarterback that he was.
Yeah, like the time is now. There's no more the coach sucks. He doesn't have the talent around him. None of those arguments that you can make for other young quarterbacks exist with Baker Mayfield anymore. Like, year 3 is now or never. Like, I'm not saying they need to make the playoffs this year, but if they're not winning 8+ games, that's an issue with the talent they have in this roster. And if they're not winning 8+ games, that's a quarterback problem. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised if this is Baker's last year there.
Yeah.
Because if they're not pushing and at least pretending to be a playoff team with the talent they have on this roster, then you have to make an adjustment there because you've done an adjustment at coach. You've added an elite level of talent. If you look at this team's roster, player for player, I'm not sure there are 3 teams with more talent across the board. Their talent is stupid for 1 to 53. And really, if that team isn't a high-level playoff contender to a low-level playoff team at the bare minimum, then that's a quarterback issue at this point because they just changed head coach. And the other thing to remember is this front office didn't draft Baker. They're not tied to Baker. So it's really now or never for him because if he doesn't put it together, don't be surprised if the Browns are looking for a new quarterback. Because you see the Bears and their GM is stuck trying to figure out if they want to pick up the 5th-year option on Mitch Trubisky. Mm-hmm. And that's because he drafted Mitch 2nd overall, and he's tied to Mitch. Mm-hmm. The guy that drafted Baker isn't in the room anymore.
Yeah, that's very true.
So there's no one there with that equity and investment in him. So it's up to him to make the most of a situation that he needs to.
Yep.
Here, let's hear is this your final loser, or do you still have 2 more?
I've got 2 more. My 4th loser is all the college football conferences that aren't called the SEC.
Oh, that's a good one.
The SEC had 63 players drafted, so
LSU had more players drafted in the first round than the Pac-12.
There you go.
LSU had 14.
SEC, you just took a bunch of L's.
LSU had 14 guys drafted, and 2 guys went undrafted. That went undrafted because of injury concern. If they didn't have injuries, they would have had 16 guys drafted.
That's wild. That's actually insane.
And that's discounting the guys they had on that they have coming back. There's a distinct possibility the number 1 receiver off the board next year is on LSU. And the best corner in the country this year was a freshman who played for LSU.
That's crazy.
This kid is literally the best corner in the country. Outside of Okuda, he was a top 3 corner, and he was straight out of high school. He still got 2 years left.
That's so wild.
And he goes to the talent in the SEC is just silly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why I kind of chose him because I thought it was hilarious when I saw the numbers of players drafted from each conference.
And the crazy part about the other conferences too is with the ACC, the Big 10 and the Big 12, they put up respectable draft numbers on the surface. Mm-hmm. But if you eliminated Ohio State, Oklahoma, and Clemson from them, their numbers are terrible. Exactly. So it really just tells you that the entire college football landscape now is the SEC, Ohio State, Oklahoma, and Clemson.
Yep.
And then a bunch of other programs that are trying to get there that aren't there yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was hilarious looking at that. It just blew me away.
Yeah, because if you look at the SEC this year, if you take out Alabama, they still had the national champion and the Sugar Bowl winner.
Yeah.
That's crazy. If you take out LSU from this year, you still have Auburn, Alabama, and Georgia as programs. If you took if you take Ohio State out of the Big 10, it's just meh.
Yeah.
If you take Clemson out of the ACC, they make the Pac-12 look like an elite conference.
Yeah.
Did you see the stat? Did you see the stat? I can't remember what the number was, but the number of first-round picks that LSU played against this year.
No, I didn't.
They played against 12 first-round picks or something, and they had 6.
That's crazy. That's wild.
That team, part of the problem, part of the help with the number is Alabama had 4 first-round picks.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you play Alabama, you play a quarter of the first round.
Yeah, those
I'll,
are factories right now, so it's
I'll
interesting.
I'll hit my final loser, and then you can hit your final loser.
Sure.
My final loser is the Falcons.
hmm
Um, the Falcons, when you watched them last year, their defense sucked, and the reason is because they got no pass rush at all,
Yeah.
and they managed to not address that. So that's a problem
Yeah.
when you watch a team that gets no pass rush, and then they just don't address that. So for me, that's an issue.
Yep.
And then their first round pick, they reached on an athletic corner who, by all accounts, has really good tape outside of the LSU game, which on the surface sounds good, except LSU was the only time he played a legitimate NFL receiver, and he got destroyed.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that tells you about a player's tape when the only time he plays a reasonably good player, he gets destroyed.
Yeah, that's a tough look.
Like, does that mean he's actually good, or does that mean he's a bully, or does that mean he's is he an actual good player, or is he just a bully beating up on the weak kid in the schoolyard?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So
Yeah, that's very fair.
So there's major question marks about him, and then the rest of their draft is just meh.
Yeah.
Like, when you look at the rest of the division, I don't think there's any question. Every single team in the NFC South got better this weekend. And you can't say that about the Falcons. So because of that, I think they took a massive L this weekend. Like, coming into the week, I didn't see a way the Panthers didn't finish in last place.
Mm-hmm.
The Panthers have a clear plan and objective and got a lot better.
Yeah.
Falcons didn't. So is it really going to be that surprising if the Panthers finish in front of the Falcons this year? Like, you tell me, right? Like,
yeah, I wouldn't be like the Falcons had. Yeah, they just didn't have a good year last year, and they didn't. I didn't think they had a good draft, and that combination does not normally go well.
How for a not very good team do you only have 6 picks?
Yeah, that makes no sense.
And one of them they used on a punter. Like,
hey, punters are people too. I think that's a solid pick.
My problem with drafting a punter is, like, is there really that much of a gap between the punter you draft and the undrafted free agent punter you bring in?
Kind of, I guess. Pro Football Focus, 2010 punter of the decade, Pat McAfee was drafted.
What round?
Probably 6 or 7.
Yeah, for me, I'd consider drafting a kicker.
Yeah, that's different, I think, actually.
But for a punter, like, what is the gap between a draftable punter and an undrafted punter?
Yeah, exactly. It can't be huge.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to hate on I don't want to be hate on punter guy, but how big is the gap? Anyway, it's enough of crapping on the Falcons. Who's your final loser?
My final loser. I struggled with this one. I couldn't think of anything. I picked Joe Burrow because I just wouldn't want to live in Cincinnati.
Because he has to play for the Bengals.
Yeah, I just wouldn't want to do that. So
he looked like a kidnap victim when he got drafted. Like, have you ever seen a player who is less excited when they got drafted? Like, it looked like someone was keeping him hostage, and they're like,
"Yeah, it was a little weird.
He's trapped here." Like,
well, that's gonna be Cincinnati for the next 5 years. So
like,
feel bad for him.
Not even a hot take. I wouldn't want to be a first overall pick.
No, I don't think I would either.
There's basically no evidence that being a first overall pick in the NFL is a good thing.
You just get a bigger bag than everybody else.
Yeah, but you go to a terrible team. Yep. Usually has no idea what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Carson Palmer who said it going into the draft, is the thing about the NFL that's different from the other sports is if you get the first overall pick, you earned it, which means you sucked. And the difference between this and other sports is usually where you look at like a hockey, a baseball, a basketball, there's usually some game shaving towards the end of the season. Whereas football, no one really does that. Like, if you get if you're the worst team in the NFL in a given year, you were the worst team in the NFL that year.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, go have fun. Like I liked what the Bengals did, but I don't know if the only player who I've ever seen truly change a franchise in my like, I guess Peyton counts, but post Peyton, the only number one pick I've ever seen truly change a franchise is Andrew Luck and kind of Cam.
Mm-hmm.
But even with Cam, he got a crazy amount of help in that organization.
Yeah.
Whereas you look at Luck, he was kind of hung out to dry his entire career.
Yeah.
But yeah, the first overall pick thing, like we're just talking about Baker, like it's year 3 and it's like now or never for him.
Mm-hmm.
It's not now or never for Sam.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not now or never for Josh Allen. It's not now or ever for Lamar. Like they've played better than he has, like no doubt, but maybe not Sam, but everyone else has played better than him. But Baker's the one who this might be his last year with the team. Like that's like, are you like, so you want to be the first round pick? Like, you're known as the first overall pick. Like that's sweet, but you also go to one of the worst teams in the league.
Yeah. But if you want the money, I mean, it wouldn't be that bad.
I don't even know if it's the money or like the notoriety of being the first overall pick.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
Anyway, that's our 5 winners and losers from the 2020. It's 2020. That's crazy. NFL draft. Sometimes I forget.
Yep. I do too all the time, man.
I'm the kind of guy who like, how old are you? It doesn't like hit me until like 2 months before my next birthday. Like fully.
That's funny.
Like I have to think about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I know how old I am, but like
that's like me for like the first 2 weeks. If anybody asks, I'm like, let me think for a minute.
Oh, I'm a good 9 or 10 months. Like I have to think about it.
That's hilarious.
Like it's not like an instant answer. Like it's like by the time I'm finally used to it, it changes again.
Hey, time flies when you're having fun.
The time I'm finally used to it, it's like, oh, you have to get used to it. I was like, what? I just got used to it.
Exactly. That's funny.
Well, let's wrap this up. Let's wrap this up, and we'll be back next week. Yep. But for Paul Guado, my name is Will Baldwin. Thanks for tuning in.